200,000 miles from Earth, 3 astronauts hear a bang. Then the lights flicker. Then the power starts dying. Jack Swigert keys his radio and says the words that would define the mission. Houston. We've had a problem. They were supposed to walk on the moon. Now they were just trying to survive it. April 11th, 1970. Apollo 13 lifts off from Kennedy Space Center, the third mission meant to land astronauts on the moon. Commander Jim Lovell was a veteran on his 4th spaceflight, having already orbited the moon once before on Apollo 8. Fred Hayes, the lunar module pilot, was flying for the first time. Command module pilot Jack Swigert was a late replacement, added to the crew just 3 days before launch after the original pilot was exposed to German measles. The plan was simple. On paper, fly to the moon, land in a region called the Frau Mauro Highlands, explore, come home. 2 days in, the mission was going almost perfectly. So smoothly, in fact, that the astronauts' own live television broadcast from space was barely watched. None of the major networks even carried it. Nobody was paying much attention to Apollo 13 anymore. That was about to change. 56 hours into the flight, Mission Control asked for something completely routine. Stir the oxygen tanks, a standard procedure to stop the contents from settling in zero gravity. Swigert flipped the switch. Deep inside the spacecraft, damaged wiring inside oxygen tank number 2, wiring that had been quietly deteriorating since a testing accident months earlier, sparked. In the pure oxygen environment, that spark became a fire within seconds. The astronauts heard a loud bang and felt the entire spacecraft shudder. Within minutes, telemetry on the ground showed a terrifying picture. Oxygen tank 2 had failed completely. Oxygen tank 1, right beside it, was now leaking into space as well. 13 minutes after the explosion, Lovell looked out the window and saw it with his own eyes. A stream of gas venting silently into the void. It's a gas of some sort, he told Houston. It was their air, their power, their water, all bleeding out into space. With the command module's power failing fast, Mission Control made a decision that would define the entire rescue. Power down Odyssey, the main spacecraft, almost completely, and move the crew into Aquarius, the small lunar module built to land 2 men on the moon for 2 days. It was never designed to keep 3 men alive for 4. Working around the clock, engineers on the ground began stretching the impossible. Every unnecessary system was shut off. Cabin temperatures dropped below 40 degrees Fahrenheit. The astronauts rationed water to 6 ounces a day each, barely a few sips. Carbon dioxide became the next crisis. The lunar module's air scrubbers were built for 2 men, not 3, and the extra canisters from the command module used a different shape entirely, incompatible with the sockets in the lunar module. Engineers on the ground spent hours building an adapter out of plastic bags, cardboard, a sock, and duct tape, then radioed the instructions up, piece by piece, so the crew could build the exact same thing by hand in freezing conditions, 200,000 miles from anyone who could help them. It worked. There was no way to simply turn around. The spacecraft's main engine, the one that would normally fire to send them home, might have been damaged by the explosion. Using it was considered too big a risk. Instead, Mission Control committed to a longer, stranger path. Let the ship's momentum carry it around the far side of the moon, using lunar gravity itself to slingshot the astronauts back toward Earth. The lunar module's smaller engine, meant only for landing, was fired twice, first to bend their path around the moon, then again afterward to speed up the trip home and correct their splashdown point. Every calculation had to be redone by hand, using systems never designed for this kind of navigation. Checked and rechecked by exhausted engineers running on coffee and adrenaline. Then came the final unknown. Had the explosion damaged the heat shield, the only thing standing between the astronauts and a fiery death during re-entry? There was no way to know for certain, There was only one way to find out. On April 17, 1970, 6 days after launch, Apollo 13's command module separated from the crippled service module for the final time. For the first time, the astronauts saw the true scale of the damage, an entire panel torn away, wiring and insulation exposed to space. Lovell later said it looked like a whole section of the ship was simply missing. The crew climbed back into the freezing, powered-down Odyssey, sealed the hatch, and let go of Aquarius, the lunar module that had kept them alive for 4 days, watching their lifeboat drift away for the final time. Then came re-entry, and with it the normal several minutes of radio blackout as superheated plasma surrounded the capsule, a silence that this time stretched a minute and a half longer than anyone expected. Mission Control waited, the world waited. Tens of millions of people were now watching, glued to television broadcasts that days earlier nobody had cared about. Then static broke, a parachute deployed, and Apollo 13 splashed down safely in the South Pacific Ocean, just 4 miles from the recovery ship waiting for them. NASA would later call it a successful failure, a mission that failed its primary goal completely and still became one of the agency's proudest achievements. No lives were lost. No mistake went unexamined. The disaster led directly to real design changes that made every future mission safer. The flight controllers who guided Apollo 13 home were eventually awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom, recognition for a kind of heroism that happened almost entirely at a desk under fluorescent lights, hundreds of thousands of miles from the danger itself. There is no dramatic villain in this story, and no single hero either. Just an enormous number of ordinary people refusing to accept that 3 astronauts were unreachable and refusing to stop working until they weren't. 2 years earlier, no one imagined a moon mission would be remembered not for a landing, but for a rescue. Sometimes the most impressive thing a team can do isn't reaching the goal. It's simply refusing to let anyone get left behind. Today, every spacecraft NASA builds carries a piece of Apollo 13 inside it. Backup systems that did not exist before this flight. Emergency procedures written because 3 men and a room full of engineers proved they were necessary. The astronauts never got to walk on the moon that week. But in a strange way, that failed landing may have taught NASA more about keeping people alive in space than any successful mission ever did. The mission is still studied today, not as a story about a rocket, but as a story about what focused, calm problem-solving can accomplish when the alternative is unthinkable. Nobody involved set out to make history. They just refused to stop working on the problem in front of them.